On January 10, 2026, three music executives arrived at a recording studio in Dallas, Texas, for a scheduled meeting. Among them was 1017 Records founder Gucci Mane. He was there to discuss business with his star artist, Pooh Shiesty. But as the meeting began, Shiesty produced an AK-style pistol, pointing it at his boss and forcing him to sign a document. While the immediate headlines focused on the kidnapping and the stolen jewelry, the criminal affidavit points to a motive found in the label's financial ledgers. Shiesty's public image relied on stacks of cash, fueled by a YouTube channel earning an estimated $200,000 a month. However, very little of that revenue was actually reaching the artist's bank account. The goal in that Dallas studio was a forced termination of his recording contract. Shiesty sought a signed release that would cancel his debt and return full control of his master recordings. The tension in that room was built on the structure of the new 1017, a joint venture where Gucci Mane identified talent while Atlantic Records provided the senior capital. Label advances and marketing budgets are loans. Through recoupment, every dollar spent on music videos and tours adds to the artist's debt. All streaming revenue flows directly to Atlantic Records first until that debt is satisfied, leaving the artist dependent entirely on physical street money. A successful artist can generate millions in gross revenue for their parent company while remaining personally in the red on the label's books. By October 2024, the financial pressure on the 1017 label peaked. Gucci Mane announced on social media he was releasing almost every artist from his roster. He explicitly cited his profit and loss statements, or P&L, as the reason for the purge. The industry, he claimed, had become a shit show, where the costs of developing new talent were no longer yielding a return. The label had suffered a string of catastrophic losses. Some artists were facing life in prison, while others, like Enchanting and Big Scar, died of drug overdoses, leaving behind massive, unrecouped marketing debts. Gucci Mane retained Pooh Shiesty because his catalog remained the label's only solvent asset. Even while incarcerated, Shiesty's streams provided the cash flow necessary to service the debt to Atlantic. Shiesty was kept on the roster because his music functioned as collateral, the financial pillar keeping the entire 1017 venture afloat. In 2022, Pooh Shiesty was sentenced to 63 months in federal prison for firearm conspiracy. His incarceration triggered a common industry provision known as contract tolling. While an artist is in prison, they cannot fulfill their personal services to the label. Tolling effectively hits pause on the contract length. The years spent in a cell do not count towards completing the multi-album obligation. But the collection of revenue does not pause. The label harvests 100% of passive streaming income to pay down the initial debt, while the artist is unable to record or tour. When Shiesty was released to home confinement in late 2025, he was immediately hit with a $1.15 million court-ordered restitution payment for a 2020 shooting in Florida. The math of this restitution is brutal. At a standard 15% royalty rate, Shiesty would need to generate over $7.6 million in net streaming revenue just to clear the court's balance. By January 2026, Pooh Shiesty was facing a level of debt that his music could no longer outpace. This financial reality led directly to the standoff at the Dallas studio. Shiesty and his accomplices arrived not to record, but to negotiate an exit. The involvement of Shiesty's father, the founder of the independent Mob Ties Records, suggests an attempt to reclaim the artist's contract from the major label system and bypass the corporate recoupment structure entirely. But the kidnapping plot failed to account for a basic legal reality. Any contract signed under physical duress or at gunpoint is legally void. Instead of freeing himself, Shiesty now faces potential life in federal prison. The very act meant to cancel his debt has ended his career. Gucci Mane outlasted the physical mutiny and remains the legal owner of the 1017 contract. However, the senior creditors at Atlantic Records and Warner Music Group remain the primary beneficiaries. They retain the master recordings and will continue to collect passive streaming revenue to satisfy the original debt. The physical takeover in Dallas failed to alter the balance of power. Shiesty remains tied to his original contract, while the label harvests the revenue from his hits to satisfy a ledger he can no longer influence. Who do you believe is the primary victim of the Dallas incident? Share your thoughts in the comments and subscribe to the Viral Scope for more forensic looks into the music business.